The morning sun cast long shadows across the wheat fields of New Hope Colony. Tommy played in the yard of their modest prefab home, his small hands busy building a tower from his favorite magnetic blocks. At 8 years old, he was one of only 12 children in the farming colony, making him precious to not just his parents, but to everyone in their small community. His mother watched from the kitchen window while preparing lunch. The colony had been their home for 3 years now, ever since they'd left Earth for a fresh start. Life wasn't easy on the frontier, but it was honest work, and the Williams family had never been happier. 10 minutes until lunch, Tommy, she called out through the window. The boy looked up and waved, his blonde hair catching the sunlight. That's when the shadows appeared. At first, they thought it was just clouds passing overhead. But clouds didn't move against the wind, and clouds didn't hum with the deep vibration that now made their windows rattle. The colony's warning sirens began to wail. Tommy, inside, now. His mother's voice carried the edge of fear that all frontier colonists dreaded. Raiders, but not the usual pirates they'd dealt with before. These ships were different. Tommy grabbed his blocks and ran toward the house. He was halfway across the yard when the first ship descended. A dark, angular vessel that looked nothing like the human ships he knew from the videos. It was bigger than their house, with strange purple lights pulsing along its sides. His father burst out of the house, running toward him. "Run, son, run." The air crackled with energy as more ships appeared. 3, then 5, then 12 of them, surrounding the colony's main settlement. Their defense turrets activated, shooting streams of plasma into the sky, but the raiders' shields absorbed the attacks like water into sand. Tommy was almost to the door when the beam hit him. It wasn't a weapon, at least not a killing one. Instead, it was some sort of stasis field, freezing him in place. He couldn't move, couldn't cry out, could barely breathe. Through terrified eyes, he watched as tall, gray-skinned figures emerged from the nearest ship. They walked with an unnatural grace, their long limbs moving like insects. Their large, dark eyes showed no emotion as they approached him. One of them reached out with a 6-fingered hand and touched his face. The touch burned like ice. "Stop, please," his father shouted, charging at them with nothing but his bare hands. The aliens turned to look at him, and one of them spoke in a voice that sounded like breaking glass. "You humans, so protective of your young. So weak." A pulse of energy knocked his father back. Tommy wanted to scream, but the field held him rigid. He could only watch as more aliens spread through the colony, systematically disabling their defenses and communications. Then, deliberately, the alien touching him pressed harder. Pain shot through Tommy's body, not enough to cause permanent damage, but enough to make him suffer. They wanted his parents to watch, wanted them to know they were powerless. "Remember this," the alien said to the gathering crowd of colonists. "Remember that your compassion makes you vulnerable. Your children make you weak. We are the Greys, and we take what we want." They held Tommy in pain for exactly 5 minutes. Not once did their expressions change, not even as his parents begged, and the colonists tried desperately to reach him through the stasis field. When they finished, they dropped him to the ground and proceeded to efficiently strip the colony of its vital resources: food, medicine, power cells, and raw materials. 20 minutes later, they were gone, leaving behind a colony in shock and a message burned into the ground. Compassion is weakness. What they didn't understand, what they couldn't understand, was that they had just made the biggest mistake in their species' history, because humans weren't weak. Their compassion, their love for their children, wasn't a weakness at all. It was about to become the most terrifying strength the galaxy had ever seen. As Tommy lay in the medical bay, his parents beside him, the first messages were already racing toward Earth at light speed. And in those messages was a truth the Greys would learn too late: never harm a human child. The message reached Earth's Central Command at 3:47 a.m. Universal Time. Admiral Thomas Reed was awakened by the urgent beeping of his comm unit. As he read the report, His hands began to shake, not from fear, but from rage. "Get me the Security Council. Now." His voice was steady, controlled, but those who knew him could hear the storm brewing underneath. Within an hour, the United Earth Security Council chamber was full. Representatives from every nation sat in tense silence as they watched the video from New Hope Colony. The footage showed everything. The attack, the deliberate torture of young Tommy, the aliens' cruel message about compassion being weakness. They targeted a child. The Indian representative's voice broke the silence. Not for survival, not for resources, but to make a point. The Chinese delegate stood up. "We have reports from 3 other colonies now. Similar attacks, similar patterns. These Greys, they're testing us, probing for weakness." Admiral Reed stepped to the center of the chamber. Behind him, more footage played. Medical scans of Tommy and other injured children. The burning message left in the ground. The systematic looting of the colonies. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "in the 100 years since we unified Earth and reached for the stars, we've faced pirates, natural disasters, and hostile environments. But this," he paused, letting the images speak for themselves. "This is different. They didn't just attack our colonies. They deliberately hurt our children to prove a point." The room erupted in angry murmurs. The Brazilian representative slammed her hand on the table. "We must respond." "And we will," Reed continued. "But first, you need to see this." New images appeared. Intelligence reports from other species, secretly passed to human operatives. The Greys had done this before, to at least 3 other spacefaring races. Each time, they targeted the young. Each time, they expected the species' protective instincts to make them withdraw, to give up their territories. The other species pulled back, Reed explained. They retreated to their core worlds, abandoned their colonies. The Greys took this as proof of their philosophy, that caring for the young makes a species weak. The room fell silent again, but this silence was different. It was the silence of a predator before the strike. The Japanese delegate spoke softly. "They fundamentally misunderstand humanity, don't they?" "Yes." Reed nodded. "They do." The vote was unprecedented. For the first time in human history, every nation, every colony, every human settlement voted unanimously. Operation Child's Shield was approved with full authority and unlimited resources. Within hours, shipyards across the solar system roared to life. Retired veterans reported for duty without being called. Military academies graduated their classes early. Civilian ships volunteered for conversion to military support roles. But perhaps most importantly, Earth's best-kept secret was finally revealed. Deep within the asteroid belt, hidden shipyards had been producing vessels far more advanced than anything humanity had shown to the galaxy. While presenting an image of a young, still developing spacefaring race, humanity had been preparing, just in case. "Send the message," Reed ordered. Across human space, the same words appeared on every screen, in every language. "To all colonies, hold fast. Help is coming. To our enemies, you believe compassion is weakness. You believe caring for our children makes us soft. You are about to learn how wrong you are. You hurt our children. Now you will learn why every species in the galaxy fears a parent protecting their young." In the medical bay on New Hope Colony, Tommy was finally sleeping peacefully. His parents watched over him, along with the colony's doctor. On the doctor's screen, the same message glowed. She looked at Tommy, then back at the message. "They really don't understand what they've done, do they?" she whispered. No, they didn't. But they would. Soon, deep in the hidden intelligence center beneath Geneva, Agent Mark Wilson stared at his screens. For the past week, he and his team had been piecing together everything known about the Greys. What they found made his blood run cold. "Director, you need to see this," he called out, his voice echoing in the dimly lit room. Director Anna Mills walked over, her footsteps silent on the metal floor. She'd been leading Earth's intelligence operations for 15 years, but she'd never seen anything like this. They've been doing this for centuries, Mark explained, pulling up map after map. Every time they find a new spacefaring race, they follow the same pattern. First, they attack the outer colonies. Then, they deliberately harm the young. But why? Anna asked, though she already suspected the answer. Because it usually works. Mark brought up more images. Look at the Centauri. They retreated to their home system after the Greys hurt their children. The Proxima Alliance abandoned 30 colonies. The ring world surrendered without a fight. Anna's eyes narrowed. They expect us to do the same. Yes, but there's something else. Mark typed rapidly, bringing up new data. We've had undercover agents in alien trading posts for years. After the attack, we activated all of them. The information they're sending back. It's interesting. On the main screen, reports from across the galaxy began to appear. The Greys weren't as united as they appeared. Their society was divided into strict castes, with the warrior caste currently in control. They believed that any species that protected their young was inherently weak, destined to be conquered. Their entire military strategy is based on this belief, Mark continued. They attack the young because, in their experience, it always forces a species to retreat and submit. Keep going, Anna said, her expression intense. Here's the key part. Mark pulled up an intercepted Grey communication. They'd been watching us for years, studying our colonies. They saw how much effort we put into protecting our children, how many resources we dedicate to education and safety. To them, this was proof of weakness. A small smile appeared on Anna's face. They've made a serious mistake, haven't you? A fatal one, Mark agreed. But there's more. Our agents found their home system. He brought up a star map. It's here, in what we call the Perseus Arm. And look what else we found. The screen showed images of massive Grey space stations, shipyards, and military installations. But something was odd about them. See these defense systems. Mark zoomed in. They're all focused outward. They never expected anyone to fight back. They have almost no internal security. Anna leaned closer. Because no species has ever counterattacked after they hurt their children. Exactly. Mark pulled up more data. And we found something else. The younger generation of Greys. They're different. Many of them disagree with the warrior caste's methods. Some have even tried to stop the attacks on children. Can we use this? Anna asked. Mark nodded. We already are. Our agents have made contact with several Grey dissidents. They're willing to help us. They want to end this cycle of violence. Anna straightened up, her decision made. Send everything to Admiral Reed. And get me a secure line to our agents. It's time to show the Greys why humanity's greatest strength is the very thing they think makes us weak. As Mark compiled the data, a message flashed across his screen. One of their deep cover agents had managed to infiltrate a Grey military installation. The information streaming in was beyond valuable. It was revolutionary. Director, Mark called out, his voice urgent. We have their defense codes, their shield frequencies, their patrol routes, everything. Anna looked at the flood of incoming data, then at the picture of Tommy that had started all of this. The Greys had thought they were attacking humanity's weakness. Instead, they had awakened its greatest strength. Send the word, she ordered. Operation Child's Shield is ready to begin Phase 1. In the depths of space, humanity's hidden fleets waited for the signal. The Greys were about to learn that there was nothing more dangerous than a species willing to fight for its children. The massive underground shipyard of Mars buzzed with activity. Chief Engineer Robert Miller walked through the enormous facility, watching as workers put the final touches on humanity's newest weapons. Above him, the sleek form of the battleship Guardian stretched nearly a kilometer in length. Beautiful, isn't she? A voice said behind him. Robert turned to see Admiral Reed approaching. The Admiral's presence here meant things were moving faster than expected. She's ready, Robert said, pointing to the Guardian. All of them are. We've installed the new shield penetrators based on the intelligence data. The Greys won't know what hit them. They walked together, passing row after row of ships. Each vessel had been built in secret over the past decade, hidden from prying alien eyes. While humanity had shown the galaxy only basic ships, these vessels represented their true capabilities. How many? Reed asked, looking at the fleet. 500 combat-ready ships in this facility alone, Robert replied. Another 1,000 spread across the other hidden shipyards, plus the 300 we've kept in public view. He paused, checking his tablet. The new weapons are all installed. Every ship has been upgraded with the countermeasures against Grey technology. They stopped at a viewing window, watching as crews loaded the last of the supplies. Below them, a line of soldiers marched toward their assigned ships. Each one had volunteered the moment they heard about Tommy and the other children. The Greys think we only have outdated plasma cannons, Robert continued. Wait until they see what we've really been working on. A test firing chamber opened in front of them. Inside, a new weapon powered up, the result of years of secret research. A beam of energy, invisible to Grey sensors, shot out. The test target, built to the exact specifications of Grey shields, shattered instantly. 0.3 seconds to penetrate their strongest shields, Robert said with pride. We've been building these since we first detected their ships near our space 5 years ago, just in case. Admiral Reed nodded. And the special project? Robert's expression turned serious. He led the Admiral to a sealed chamber. Inside, rows of smaller devices lined the walls. We call them Guardians 2, Robert explained. Tiny eye-driven drones, each one programmed to protect human children. We're deploying them to every colony. If the Greys try to hurt another child. He left the sentence unfinished. How long until everything is ready? Reed asked. 24 hours. Every ship is armed. Every crew is trained. The new defense systems are being installed in all colonies. Robert checked his screens again. The Greys won't find easy targets this time. Suddenly, alarms began blaring. Not attack alarms, but priority message alerts. A communication officer ran up to them, tablet extended. Sir, message from intelligence, she reported. Our agents inside Grey space report their fleet is mobilizing. They're planning to attack 3 more colonies. Reed's face hardened. They still think we're going to retreat like the others. Sir, Robert said, we can be ready in 12 hours if we need to be. The crews will work double shifts. Reed looked out at the fleet once more, then at a picture on his tablet. Tommy, now recovering, surrounded by other colony children, each one wearing a small device on their wrist, connected to the new Guardian drones. Tell every ship to prepare for immediate launch, Reed ordered, and send word to all colonies. Operation Child's Shield is advancing to Phase 2. As they walked back through the facility, crews ran to their stations. Ships began powering up, their engines humming with energy the Greys had never seen before. In spaces hidden throughout the solar system, humanity's real fleet prepared for war. The Greys had thought they were attacking simple farmers and civilians. Instead, they had awakened a sleeping giant, a giant that had been preparing, watching, and waiting. A giant that was about to show the galaxy why humanity's love for its children wasn't weakness. It was power beyond anything the Greys could imagine. In 12 hours, the greatest fleet humanity had ever assembled would launch, and with it, a message that would echo across the galaxy. Never mistake humanity's compassion for weakness. The Grey Command Center orbited their homeworld, its massive form casting shadows on the planet below. Inside, Commander Apex watched security feeds from their outer territories. His species had done this dozens of times before. Strike the colonies, hurt the young, and watch as their enemies retreated in fear. But something was wrong. Commander, a junior officer called out, the human colonies, they're not evacuating. Apex moved to the viewing screen. The officer was right. Instead of the usual panic and retreat they expected, the human colonies were calm. Almost too calm. That's when the first alarms started. Multiple ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Another officer shouted, They're everywhere." Across every screen, human vessels appeared. Not the simple transport and defense ships the Greys had seen before. These were warships, sleek and deadly, emerging from hyperspace in perfect formation. "Impossible," Apex whispered. "Their technology isn't this advanced. We've been watching them." The main screen lit up with a transmission. Admiral Reed's face appeared, his expression cold. "This is Admiral Thomas Reed of the United Earth Fleet. You hurt our children. Now, you'll learn why that was a mistake." Before Apex could respond, the attack began. The human ships moved with precision the Greys had never seen. Their weapons, technology that shouldn't have existed, cut through Grey shields like they weren't even there. In the first 30 seconds, 20 Grey defense stations went dark. "Shields are useless," a Grey officer screamed. "Their weapons, we can't stop them." Apex reached for the command console. They needed to rally their fleet, to show these humans real power. But nothing responded. "Command codes aren't working," an officer reported, panic in his voice. "Someone's locked us out of our own systems." Inside the Grey networks, human cyber weapons, planted months ago by deep cover agents, sprang to life. Defense grids failed. Communication systems crashed. Backup systems tried to activate, only to find themselves already compromised. On the bridge of the Guardian, Admiral Reed watched as the carefully planned operation unfolded. Decades of preparation, years of hidden technological development, months of infiltration. It all came together perfectly. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "Phase 1 complete. All major Grey military installations have been neutralized. 0 casualties among civilian populations." That was important. Humanity wasn't here for revenge. They were here for justice. In Grey space, more human ships appeared. Each one targeted military assets with surgical precision. Weapons platforms, shipyards, command centers, anything that could be used to hurt another child. All disabled or destroyed. "Commander," a Grey officer turned to Apex, "we're receiving reports from the outer territories. Human ships are appearing everywhere. They're protecting everyone's colonies, not just their own." It was true. The human fleet had divided into 3 parts. One struck at Grey military targets, another protected human colonies, and the third spread out across space, positioning ships near every species' colonies that the Greys had ever attacked. On the Guardian's bridge, Reed received a new message. "Sir, Grey civilian channels are active. They're thanking us. The younger Greys, they're rising up against the warrior caste." Reed nodded. Intelligence had been right about the divide in Grey society. The younger generation had watched in horror as their leaders attacked children across the galaxy. Now they had their chance to change things. "Send the second message," Reed ordered. Across Grey space, on every working channel, a new transmission began playing. It showed Tommy and the other children, recovering and protected. It showed human ships defending not just their colonies, but everyone's colonies. And it carried a simple message. "We protect our children. We protect all children. If you stand with us, we will stand with you. If you stand against us, you've seen what happens." In the Grey Command Center, Apex watched his empire crumble. They had thought humans weak because they loved their children. They had never been more wrong. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as humanity's broadcast spread from system to system. On thousands of worlds, on millions of screens, the same images played. The attacked children, the Grey raids, and humanity's response. In the Great Hall of the Centauri Council, Leader Ben watched the broadcast with tears in his eyes. His people had retreated when the Greys hurt their young. They had hidden in their home system, living with their shame. "Send the message," he ordered his staff. "Tell the humans we stand with them." Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. The Proxima Alliance, the Ringworlds, and dozens of other species that had suffered under Grey attacks, all of them watching, all of them deciding. On the Guardian's bridge, the communications officer could barely keep up with the incoming transmissions. "Admiral," she called out, "we're receiving responses from everywhere. The Centauri are mobilizing their fleet to help us. The Proxima Alliance is offering their shipyards. The Ringworlds are sharing their defense technologies." Admiral Reed stood at the viewport, watching as Allied ships began appearing alongside the human fleet. Species that had never worked together were now united by a single purpose: to ensure no child would ever be harmed again. Meanwhile, on the Grey homeworld, the revolution had begun. Young Greys, led by those who had long opposed the warrior caste's cruelty, took to the streets. They carried images from the human broadcast, not the scenes of military might, but the pictures of Tommy and the other children recovering, protected by their new Guardian drones. "Our ancestors were wrong," shouted one young Grey leader to the crowds. "Protecting the young isn't weakness. It's the greatest strength any species can have." The warrior caste tried to resist, but their power was broken. Their military lay in ruins, their defense systems useless, their authority shattered. More importantly, their ideology had been proven catastrophically wrong. Back on the Guardian, Agent Mark Wilson arrived with new intelligence reports. "The Grey civilian population is overwhelmingly supporting the revolution," he reported to Admiral Reed. "They're sharing stories we never knew about. Young Greys who tried to stop the attacks, who warned other species, who helped victims escape." "And the warrior caste?" Reed asked. "Running, hiding, or surrendering?" Mark replied. "But here's the interesting part. The young Greys aren't calling for revenge. They're asking for a chance to make things right." Reed nodded. This was what humanity had hoped for. Not just victory, but change. On screens across Grey space, a new message began playing. It showed human doctors treating injured Grey civilians. It showed human ships protecting Grey merchant vessels. And most importantly, it showed human children reaching out to young Greys in friendship. The message was clear. Humanity's strength came not from weapons or technology, but from their capacity to protect and forgive. In the medical bay of New Hope Colony, Tommy watched the news with his parents. The room was filled with flowers and messages from across the galaxy, species he'd never heard of sending their support and thanks. "Did we win?" he asked his father. His father smiled. "We did more than win, son. We showed the galaxy a better way." Back on the Guardian, Reed received one final report. The Grey Civilian Council, now led by the younger generation, had sent their first official message to Earth. "Dear humans," it began, "we watched in horror as our leaders hurt your children. We watched in awe as you responded not with blind rage, but with precise justice. And we watched in wonder as you showed mercy to our civilians, even as you broke our military power. We ask not for forgiveness, which we must earn, but for a chance to learn from you. To learn how to be strong through compassion, not cruelty." Reed looked at the message, then at the growing fleet of Allied ships surrounding his vessel. The Greys had been right about one thing. Humanity's love for their children had changed everything. Just not in the way they expected. 1 year after the Grey attacks, the New Hope Colony had changed. The wheat fields still swayed in the breeze, but now they were protected by invisible Guardian drones and a planetary shield. More importantly, the colony had new neighbors. Tommy, now 9 years old, stood in the colony's new friendship park. Beside him, a young Grey named First Light helped him build a tower with his magnetic blocks. They were the same blocks he'd been playing with on that fateful day, but now they served a different purpose. "Higher?" First Light asked, carefully placing another block. "Higher," Tommy agreed with a smile. Around them, other children played. Humans, Greys, Centauri, and more. The park had become a symbol of the new galactic order, one built on protecting the young rather than exploiting them. In orbit above the colony, The Guardian maintained its watch. Admiral Reed stood on the bridge, reviewing reports from across the galaxy. The changes of the past year still amazed him. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "the Grey Council's education ships have reached the ring worlds. They're beginning the cultural exchange program." Reed nodded with satisfaction. The young Greys had kept their word. After taking control from the warrior caste, they had transformed their society. Their military ships were converted into education vessels, traveling the galaxy to teach and learn from other species. On Earth, the United Council chamber was in session. Representatives from 50 species filled the hall, discussing the newest addition to galactic law, the Child Protection Act. It made the harming of any young sentient being a crime against all species, punishable by united response. Director Anna Mills, still running Earth's intelligence operations, watched the proceedings with pride. Her networks now worked with young Grey truth seekers, sharing information to prevent conflicts before they began. The Grey talent for gathering intelligence, once used to find weaknesses, now served to protect the vulnerable. Back in New Hope Colony, Tommy's mother watched from their porch as First Light's parents arrived to pick up their child. The adult Greys moved carefully, still conscious of how their presence might affect humans. But Tommy ran up to them without fear. "Can First Light come back tomorrow?" he asked. "We're building a hospital in the Block City." The Grey parents looked at each other, their large eyes showing their new understanding of human emotions. "Of course," they answered. "Building together makes us all stronger." In the colony's meeting hall, Tommy's father sat with other colony leaders, including reformed Grey commanders. They were planning the next phase of colonial expansion, not competition for resources, but cooperation in settling new worlds. "We were wrong about everything," one Grey commander admitted. "We thought protecting the young made a species weak. Instead, it creates the strongest bonds imaginable." Above the colony, more ships arrived. Centauri vessels bringing new farming techniques, Ring World ships carrying advanced medical supplies, and in the lead, a Grey education ship, its hull painted with the new symbol of their species, not a weapon, but an open hand of friendship. Admiral Reed received one final report for the day. The last members of the old Grey warrior caste had been found, but instead of calling for punishment, the younger Greys had asked for something different, a chance to teach them about strength through compassion. "Send the approval," Reed ordered, "and send them the latest video from New Hope Colony." The video showed Tommy and First Light completing their block tower. At the top, they had placed pieces from both their worlds, joined together. Around the base, other children added their own blocks, each bringing something from their culture. As the sun set over New Hope Colony, Tommy and First Light watched their towers shine in the fading light. The magnetic blocks hummed softly, holding pieces from a dozen worlds together in perfect balance. "Will it last?" First Light asked. Tommy nodded. "It'll last because we built it together, and because now everyone understands." Above them, the stars began to appear. Among them, ships from every species patrolled together, protecting not just their own young, but all young. The galaxy had learned humanity's greatest lesson. True strength comes not from causing fear, but from working together to protect those who need it most. The new order had begun, and it started with a child's tower of blocks, reaching for the stars.